Some people carry an invisible frequency, a quiet signal that only the broken can hear. They walk into a room and without saying a word, those who are wounded seem to drift toward them. It's not magic, and it's not coincidence. It's resonance. The kind of resonance that happens when one soul recognizes a familiar ache in another. To outsiders, it looks like compassion. To the ones living it, it feels like gravity. They attract the broken because they understand them, not through words, but through survival. There's a softness in their eyes that says, you don't have to explain. A patience that feels like home. But beneath that gentleness lies a story. A story of someone who has spent years holding other people's pain, often at the cost of their own. Psychologists call this empathic over-identification. It happens when someone's empathy becomes so porous that they can't distinguish where another's pain ends and theirs begins. These people have often been the healers since childhood, the ones who comforted crying parents, mediated fights, or absorbed tension in the room just to keep the peace. They learned early that love is something you earn by fixing others. So, they keep attracting people who need fixing, because that's the only version of love they recognize. But here's the paradox. The very thing that makes them magnetic, their emotional sensitivity, also becomes their burden. They become emotional sponges, soaking up sadness, guilt, chaos, and mistaking it for connection. And while the broken find comfort in their warmth, the empath slowly empties themselves, quietly disappearing under the weight of everyone else's healing. To understand why some people attract the broken, you have to go back, far back, to where they first learned that peace was fragile. Maybe they grew up in a house where love came with conditions, where affection arrived only after calming storms, where their worth was tied to how well they could soothe others. These early environments wire the brain to equate chaos with love. In psychological terms, this is called trauma bonding. It's when your nervous system becomes addicted to inconsistency, the highs and lows, the warmth and withdrawal. When calm feels unfamiliar, you chase intensity. And so, as adults, these people are drawn to partners, friends, and even strangers who carry emotional wounds. Because brokenness feels like home, peace feels foreign. They don't mean to fix anyone. It just happens. They find themselves listening for hours, rescuing, repairing, taking responsibility for emotions that were never theirs to hold. But deep down, what they're really trying to fix isn't the other person. It's the part of themselves that was never cared for. Healing others becomes an unconscious way of healing the child inside who never got rescued. And so, their relationships become patterns of quiet suffering. They give too much, hope too long, and blame themselves when things fall apart. They confuse empathy with obligation, compassion with self-erasure. But what they call love is often self-abandonment in disguise. People who attract the broken are rarely naive. They're often deeply intelligent, emotionally aware, intuitive. But that awareness turns inward, not outward. They analyze others, but rarely themselves. They see the pain in everyone else's eyes and call it destiny, not projection. But what's really happening is emotional mirroring. They see in others what they've repressed in themselves. That's why they can sense sadness before it's spoken. They recognize fear without words. Because it's the same fear they've carried quietly all along. Fear of being unneeded, unseen, unloved unless they are useful. So they choose partners who depend on them, friends who lean too heavily, people who take and take, because giving feels like purpose. But eventually, the exhaustion sets in. They start to wonder why they always end up drained, why they always attract the wounded but never the healed. And the truth is hard to face, because part of them needs to be needed. Their identity has become entangled with being the savior. Letting go of that role feels like losing their worth. Yet, the reality is that you can't build love from rescue missions. You can't create balance when your heart's always holding someone else's weight. You can hold space for another's healing, but you cannot be their healing. The moment you forget that, you lose yourself. Healing from this pattern requires an uncomfortable truth, that not everyone's pain is yours to carry. For someone wired to help, that truth feels almost cruel. But boundaries aren't rejection, they're recognition. They say, I see your pain, but I also see myself. They transform empathy from a cage into a compass. Psychologists describe this as differentiated empathy, the ability to care deeply without losing yourself in someone else's storm. It's not about shutting down, it's about staying grounded. The more you understand your own wounds, the less likely you are to mistake someone else's brokenness for belonging. When you start healing, your energy shifts. You stop attracting people who need saving and start meeting those who can stand beside you. The relationships become reciprocal instead of draining. Love begins to feel lighter, steadier, quieter. Not because the world has fewer broken people, but because you've stopped confusing love with labor. It's in that quiet, balanced space where you finally understand it's not your job to be everyone's medicine. Sometimes love means letting others heal themselves, even if that means walking away. Here's the paradox of the empath. Their greatest strength, their heart, is also their greatest vulnerability. The world needs their kindness, their ability to listen, their capacity to love the unseen. But that gift only works when it's rooted in wholeness, not depletion. When you learn to sit with your own pain instead of running towards someone else's, something shifts. You stop attracting the broken because you stop needing their brokenness to feel complete. You begin to understand that true connection isn't built on fixing, it's built on being. Two whole people meeting without agenda. Two stories walking side by side, not one trying to rewrite the other. And for the first time, peace doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like safety. You stop seeking chaos disguised as love, and you start attracting calm disguised as truth. You realize you were never cursed for drawing the broken. You were simply reflecting what still needed to heal within you. And when that healing happens, the frequency changes. The people who come into your life no longer need to be saved. They're there to grow with you. And that's when you finally understand what love was meant to feel like all along. Not heavy, not hollow, but whole.